The wind was always worse on the island. Locals said it scraped the cliffs, like it was trying to take pieces back with it. Like the sea wanted revenge for everything that refused to sink. It was 2001 when the ferry first brought them out. 6 young people who had signed on for a summer of isolation, good pay, and clean salt air. A government-run conservation program helped staff a decommissioned lighthouse on Trask Island. 40 miles off the coast of Maine, simple jobs. Maintain the radio relay. Photograph the coastline. Keep the grounds safe from erosion. It was supposed to be easy money. Before grad school, before weddings, before debt, before real life took over, but no one ever came back. No calls, no boats, no emergency signal, and Trask Island, in the long August silence that followed, became known for one thing: its absence. For 22 years, the case became a permanent bruise in the mind of the state. The Trask Six, newspapers called them. When investigators arrived weeks later, the lighthouse was still standing. Lights still turned, solar panels still intact, generator humming, beds made, food half prepared on the table, but no people, no signs of struggle. Not one of them was ever found. Not until yesterday. The call came just after dawn. Sheriff Malcolm Forrester stood at the window of his home, coffee going cold in his hand, as the voice on the line explained what had happened. A ferry captain making his usual mail drop at a dock near Camden swore he'd picked up a man, barefoot, soaked to the skin, who claimed he'd come off Trask. He was disoriented, his hair long, eyes hollow, wouldn't give a name. Just kept saying, it didn't burn. The lighthouse never burned. That's not why we disappeared. Forrester had been a deputy when the case first opened. Young, full of conviction. His father was sheriff then. He still remembered the ferry trip out, the search teams combing the cliffs. The way the sea looked too calm, like it was hiding something. He still had the original report. It sat in a file labeled closed, indeterminate. But the story never felt closed. Now, 2 decades later, it was open again. His name was Caleb Shore. Age 20 when he vanished. Now 40-2. The woman at the hospital said he hadn't spoken since the first sentence about the fire. He just stared out the window. When Forrester entered the room, Caleb didn't move. His beard was patchy. His skin burned in places. If you're enjoying the story, take a second to subscribe, hit like, or drop a comment. It helps us grow and brings more stories your way. Caleb, the sheriff said, pulling up a chair. I'm not here to push. I just want to know what happened. Caleb's eyes blinked slowly. His voice cracked like stone breaking. We never left. In 2001, 6 young people boarded the ferry to Trask Island. Caleb Shore, environmental sciences major. Pragmatic, quiet, engaged to be married. June Halley, Marine, biology grad, known for swimming at night and speaking in riddles. Leo, Riggs charming, cocky, scholarship student, who filmed everything. Emerson Clark, musician, always journaling. Played guitar to the wind. Maya Weaver, trauma medic, joining the team for a break from fieldwork. Jesse Holt, former Eagle, Scout protective. Everyone's single quotes as Big Brother. They were a mix of volunteers and paid interns from 3 different schools, chosen for their specialties. A temporary assignment, summer only. Funded by the Department of Coastal Infrastructure, the lighthouse itself hadn't been active since the early 80s. It was still maintained as a backup relay point for the Coast Guard. Old granite dash-based with 2 lower storage buildings and a high keeper's chamber. Surrounded by cliffs. The foghorn ran on a schedule. The beacon rotated once every 8 seconds. Everything was solar-powered, backed by a generator and deep-cycle batteries. The only way on or off the island was by ferry twice a month, or signal the coast. Guard in an emergency. That was the plan, and everything was normal for 3 weeks. Caleb's voice was barely a whisper. We didn't know. Not at first. There were noises, but we thought they were animals' wind. The kind of stuff you hear when you're away from cities. But they came from under the lighthouse. Forrester leaned in, careful not to interrupt. Caleb's hands shook as he picked at the blanket. It was June who first said it. She was always sensitive. She said the ground didn't feel empty underneath us, that when she walked at night, she could hear humming, not electrical, not mechanical, something low, organic. He looked up at the sheriff. Have you ever heard the ground breathe? Leo filmed everything. The recovered footage found weeks after their disappearance contained a handful of mundane clips. The team unloading gear from the ferry. Maya setting up the generator and joking about ghosts. Emerson playing his guitar on the cliffs. Jesse fixing a busted railing near the base of the beacon. But the final video was different. The angle, shaky. The focus wrong. It showed the lighthouse at night, standing against the black sky, but the beam wasn't spinning. It was pulsing, like it was alive. And in the last 5 seconds, the camera caught June, back, turned, staring at the ground, mouthing something over and over. Before the feed cut to static, no one ever decoded the lip movements. In the hospital room, Forrester laid the photograph on Caleb's bed. It showed the 6 of them, arms around each other. With the lighthouse behind, he watched Caleb's eyes scan it. Do you know what happened to them? He asked gently. Caleb's lips pressed tight. They're still there. But we searched everything. The cliff edges. The tower. The tunnels there were no tunnels, Caleb said sharply. Not when we got there. The floor was solid concrete. He looked away, but that changed. Week 4, the generator failed. Jesse, who'd run diagnostics before, swore nothing was wrong. But it was dead. The batteries drained too fast. Even with sunlight, they lit candles. Used flashlights, sent a radio call. But no one responded. June began drawing, in chalk. On walls. Symbols. No one recognized. She claimed they came to her in dreams. Said they had to be remembered, not feared. Maya thought it was stress. Emerson played music louder. Leo joked about it being the Blair Witch Lighthouse edition. Then the floor in the basement cracked. They heard it one morning, splitting, grinding like teeth. Jesse opened the trapdoor and found a hollow space beneath, about the size of a closet. Newly formed, as if the stone had caved in or been pushed. Inside was nothing, just smooth earth. Until the next day, I don't know if it was real, Caleb said. I know how it sounds. Forrester said nothing, just listened. But that chamber kept growing. Not fast, not like a sinkhole. Like something was digging. From underneath, not machines, not water damage. Something careful, intentional, and you didn't leave. We tried. The ferry didn't come. The signal didn't work. We even lit a fire on the cliffs. An emergency flare? Nothing. We were alone. He exhaled, voice brittle, but we weren't. One by one, they changed. Jesse started sleeping by the trapdoor. Said he heard it, whispering. Maya began boiling seawater for hours. Said she had to extract the salt. Emerson stopped playing guitar. Instead, he wrote pages of music with no notes, only black circles. June refused to speak in English, muttering phrases that weren't from any language the others knew. Only Leo stayed normal, filming, documenting, documenting, though his eyes darkened by the day, and Caleb watching them all unravel, trying to remember what day it was. One night, Caleb woke to silence. The kind that felt wrong. He walked down the stairs, flashlight, shaking in his hand. Everyone's beds were empty, except for Leo. He was curled in the corner of the generator room. Camera clutched to his chest, whispering, "It took them. It didn't kill them. It unwound them." Caleb asked what that meant. Leo just shook his head. The lighthouse isn't on the island. The island is on the lighthouse. We were inside something else all along. The doctors at the hospital said Caleb was medically stable. But mentally, they weren't sure. His scans were clean. He hadn't aged as much as expected. Dehydrated, but not critically. No injuries beyond exposure and fatigue. And no one could explain how he'd gotten off Trask. There were no boats, no signal. No scheduled crossings, yet here he was, that night. Sheriff Forrester drove to the coast and stood on the dock where the original ferry had launched, 22 years ago. The sea was calm, no wind. He lit a cigarette and stared at the black water. The lighthouse on Trask still turned, every 8 seconds. But tonight, just before midnight, it skipped twice. The lighthouse skipped again the next night. Sheriff Forrester sat alone in his office with a timer, watching a live camera feed wired to the Coast Guard's backup lens, the only one that still looked out toward Trask Island. Every 8 seconds, like clockwork, until it wasn't. At 11:52 p.m., the beam halted mid-rotation, paused for almost 4 seconds, then snapped into motion like a reel catching. He replayed it, slower, still there. 8 seconds. 8 seconds. 12, 8. There was no technical explanation. Not unless someone had overridden the motor, something only possible from inside the tower. But Trask had been uninhabited for 22 years. No maintenance crew, no contractors. The beacon was powered by auto relay and shielded battery arrays. It rotated regardless of the weather, unless someone or something had changed the rhythm. He picked up the phone. Send someone out there, he told the Coast Guard. There was a pause, and a quiet voice replied, Sheriff, with respect. We don't go to Trask. Caleb refused to sleep. He sat with knees drawn to his chest in the hospital bed, still wearing the same salt-stained shirt. Hands pale and wrinkled from days of dehydration. He hadn't touched the food, just stared at the wall with a kind of bruised stillness until he spoke again. She wanted to show us, he whispered, but we wouldn't listen. Forrester set the recorder down carefully. Who? Caleb didn't answer at first. Then, June. She said it wasn't evil. That it was memory. Buried, trying to breathe. Breathe how? She called. The spirals, said it lived below us, said the lighthouse was just the eye. But the body ran deeper. Forrester leaned forward. Did you ever go down there? Caleb nodded slowly. Only once. August 13th, 2001. The trapdoor beneath the basement was wide open, not broken, not collapsed. Just ... open. Emerson was the first to vanish. He'd spent the previous night sketching a spiral across one wall of the tower. Loop after loop in thick charcoal. Eyes unfocused. When Caleb found him, he was mumbling lyrics under his breath. That morning, his bed was empty. No note, no footprints. Just his guitar left in the kitchen, every string removed. Neck cracked. Neatly in two, they searched the entire island. No sign. That night, the fog came. Thick, heavy. Drowning the entire compound in white silence. And someone, Caleb, couldn't say who, went down into the hole. When the sun rose, there were only 4 of them left. Did you ever see what was under there? Forrester asked. Caleb looked hollow. Yes, he swallowed. But you have to understand, it wasn't a tunnel. It didn't lead somewhere. It folded. Like the deeper we went, the more it turned inward. The walls weren't dirt anymore. They were smooth, slick. Like limestone, but wet, breathing. He shuddered, and it was quiet. Not silent. Quiet. Like sound was being pulled inward. Like even your voice got absorbed. He paused, gazed distant. June said it was where memory went to die. June herself stopped speaking the day After Emerson vanished, she sat beside the trapdoor for hours at a time, fingers tracing the edge of the opening. No one could understand why she wasn't afraid. "She's just cracked," Leo said. "We've all lost it a little." But Maya disagreed. She stayed with June, slept in the kitchen, began copying her symbols in small, spiral notebooks. Caleb remembered walking in one night to find the two of them sitting cross-legged, whispering back and forth like they were rehearsing a script. When he asked what they were doing, Maya smiled faintly and said, "We're preparing. Some places don't want to be remembered." Then Leo disappeared. Caleb found his camera buried in the sand behind the generator shed. Still working, the last footage was grainy, filmed in near darkness. It showed Leo pointing the camera down into the trapdoor, whispering to himself, "I think there's something in the walls. I think it knows we're here. I think." A sharp inhale. The camera tipped sideways, static. Forrester watched the clip 5 times before turning it off, and Caleb closed his eyes. Jesse tried to kill the power, said if it couldn't feed, it couldn't grow. Feed, Caleb nodded. He thought the light kept it going, that the pulses weren't just signals, they were cycles. Like a heartbeat. Every 8 seconds, a breath, an invitation. He exhaled. He wasn't wrong. That night, the power cut out on the mainland for precisely 8 seconds, just long enough for the lighthouse to go dark and blink back on. Only Trask's beacon remained steady. Forrester didn't sleep. Caleb continued. Jesse went down alone. He thought he could break it. He took rope, a flare, his compass, said if he didn't come back in 20 minutes, I was supposed to seal the trapdoor. Did you? I tried. He paused, but the next morning it was open again. Forrester's hands curled on the table, and Maya. She followed him. When Caleb hesitated, then she didn't tell me. I just woke up and found her boots at the edge, and June beat past. She never left. Did she die there? Caleb shook his head. She belonged there. He told Forrester that by the last day, the spiral had widened into a kind of room, not a tunnel. Not a shaft, but a space, empty. Circular walls, slick with some kind of black moss. Warm air, metallic scent. He stepped in once. Just once, said. The floor had no bottom, only soft resistance, like standing on breath. And the moment he crossed the threshold, time stuttered. His watch spun backward. His nose bled. His eyes filled with tears. He didn't remember crying. And from the walls, a voice, his own voice, repeated his thoughts before he had them. That was when he knew he had to leave, but you stayed. Forrester said quietly. Caleb's expression flickered. I tried to leave, and it wouldn't let me. He took a shaky breath. It didn't want me dead. It wanted me to understand. Understand what? That memory is a hunger. That forgetting isn't the problem. Remembering is. He stared at the window. Places like that, ... They're not haunted by what happened. They're haunted by what won't stop repeating. That same night, a tech at the weather station reported something odd. A wind spiral formed over Trask, unnatural in symmetry. It didn't rotate, it pulsed. Satellite imagery failed to render a clean picture. The data was scrambled. The center of the spiral was the lighthouse, and then, 5 minutes after the reading stopped, the system logged a spike in infrafrequency, vibrations below human hearing. The timestamp? 11:52 p.m., the exact time the lighthouse beam skipped. Forrester returned to the hospital in the morning. Caleb was gone. No sign of escape. No prints. No security breach. Bed still warm. His chart remained at the nurse's station where he'd written something in pencil just before disappearing. One line. I had to go back. The spiral doesn't end where we think it does. The sheriff drove to the coast himself, boarded a private fishing boat, paid in cash, said nothing. He took binoculars, a flare gun, an old radio set, and a photograph of the 6 missing kids. It was nearly sunset when Trask came into view. The island looked the same. Gray cliffs, tall tower, whispering grass, but something was different. The lighthouse beam didn't rotate anymore. It blinked once, pause, once, pause. A signal, not random, not broken. Morse code. He translated it on the spot, 2 letters. C.S. Caleb Shore. The final audio recovered from the emergency channel was short. It lasted 6 seconds. Recorded from Forrester's radio, set to distress frequency. Static. Then, the sheriff's voice. It's not a place, it's a recursion. We're walking inside someone's memory. Then, a second voice. Caleb's. And they're starting to remember us. Forrester was never seen again. Neither was Caleb. But a week later, a storm rolled across the coast. The worst in decades. Lightning struck power substations. Entire sectors lost light. All except Trask Island. The lighthouse remained lit, blinking, always blinking, not rotating anymore, just calling. The emergency frequency stayed open for 6 more days. No voice ever came through again. Just that same pattern, blink, pause, blink. A signal from Trask Island that no one wanted to receive. At the Coast Guard station in Bar Harbor. Technicians tried to jam it, redirect it, scramble it. Nothing worked. The lighthouse beam no longer followed any mechanical rhythm. It pulsed according to some external will, an intelligence that wasn't electrical, but emotional, like it was learning or remembering. They called in researchers from 3 different universities. Dr. Kamala Reeve, a neurolinguistic pattern specialist, was the first to crack it. The light wasn't just sending coordinates or distress codes, it was mimicking grief. She fed the pulses into a sound model designed to replicate human IG frequencies under duress. The pattern matched that of a subject recalling a traumatic memory. On loop, not just remembering. Living. Trask Island remained off limits. The Coast Guard refused landing. Civilian boats turned back. One drone launched from a private investigator's boat went silent the moment it passed the 10-mile radius. Its footage, retrieved only halfway, showed the cliffs of the island. Changing, not eroding. Not collapsing. Shifting. The rocks were curving. Slightly arcing, INWARD. As if the island wasn't land anymore. As if it was forming into something. At the hospital, Nurse Jenna Ayers sat in silence long after her shift. She was the last person to speak to Caleb. Sure, before his disappearance. She hadn't told anyone this, but the night before he vanished. He left her something, folded in a towel. A page, torn from a notebook. On it, 6 symbols, arranged in a circle, spiraling inward. Each symbol was different. Some geometric, others crude. She thought it was gibberish. Until the news mentioned Dr. Reeve's work. One of the symbols matched a neurological diagram of short-term memory decay. Another, the mathematical symbol for recursion. She called the sheriff's department, left the message. But no one answered, because Sheriff Forrester was already gone. He never docked. The last visual of his boat showed it circling the south edge of the island. Slowly, like it was caught in a current that didn't exist. When search teams finally boarded the vessel, they found it empty. No signs of struggle. No radio contact. Just one thing left behind. A photograph. The original group photo of the Trask 6. But now, it had 7 people in it. A new face at the edge of the group, blurred, Mune feed, 5 eyelid. But someone was there. Weeks passed. Then a family in Bangor reported something strange. Their daughter, age 9, had come home with a journal. She claimed she found it in a thrift store. It was leather-bound, weather-damaged. But inside were names, dates, sketches, drawings of spirals, cliff faces, a tall structure labeled the eye. One page simply read, "Places remember people the way people remember songs. Not all at once, but in rhythm, in feeling." The journal was signed, Maya Weaver. The parents turned it over to authorities. DNA confirmed the material contained cells consistent with Maya's original profile, but aged beyond explanation. The page fibers were dated to approximately 2023, meaning it had been written recently. But Maya Weaver vanished in 2001. Dr. Reeve went public. She published her findings in a peer-reviewed paper, Non-Human Mnemonic Patterns in Geographic Light Sources. The academic world mocked her, called it performance art, called it grief science, until the Lighthouse skipped again. This time broadcasting 7 pulses, always at 11:52. P.M. Always followed by silence. People began gathering on the coast, not tourists, not Steve, not media, locals, families of the missing mothers. Brothers, college roommates. They stood facing the water, watching the blinking eye in the distance. Some wept. Some stayed silent. A few whispered names like prayers. No one organized it. They just came, as if pulled. One night, a man named Thomas Briggs, a cousin of Leo, spoke during the gathering. He said he had started dreaming again. Dreams of a circular room, no ceiling, no sky, only wet stone. And a heartbeat in the walls. He said in the dream. Leo was still filming, still laughing. But the laughter wasn't right. It echoed before he said anything. Like the memory of the sound came first, then the moment. He said the spiral had teeth, then he cried, and didn't say another word. The FBI quietly reopened the case, classified it as metaphysical anomaly, localized. 3 agents visited the island via military chopper. They stayed 6 hours. When they returned, one spoke. Only once, he said. It's not an island. It's a mind, and we're all in it. He hasn't spoken since. In early October, another journal surfaced. This one in Vermont, left at the doorstep of a retired lighthouse keeper named Clay Harmon. Inside, sketches, mathematical notations. A list of names: Caleb, June, Jesse, Emerson, Maya, and a note. The spiral has found shape. It's remembering forward now. Signed, E.C. Emerson Clark. Then the pulses changed, from 7 to 8. Then to 9 each night. One more. And with each pulse, people reported dreams. Not nightmares, but memories that weren't theirs. People they didn't know. Standing in a lighthouse, talking, laughing. One woman dreamed of cooking dinner for 5 friends in a tower kitchen. She said she could smell the sea, hear the gulls. Another man dreamed of tuning a guitar, sitting on a cliff. He didn't know how to play guitar, but in the dream, his fingers moved perfectly. Dr. Reeve published again. Echo phenomena and mnemonic bleed in coastal populations. She was ridiculed again until the 8th person returned. She was found walking barefoot along the coast of Machiasport, hair white, skin thin. Eyes clear. She said her name was June. Hallie. Age 44. But her records showed her birth year as 1981, which made her 64. And yet, she hadn't aged a day past 30. She refused interviews, refused transportation, but she agreed to one meeting with Nurse Ayers. No one else behind closed doors. She spoke for 11 minutes. When the nurse emerged, she was crying. She would only say one thing. We're not meant to understand where memories go when no one is left to hold them. That night, the lighthouse stopped blinking. It began to spin again. Slow, graceful, constant. The normal 8-second cycle resumed. No skips, no pulses, no signal. But just as people began to move on to explain it away, Dr. Reeve disappeared, left her car, her notes, her apartment unlocked on the desk. Her final entry: there is no end to the spiral, because it's not a shape. It's a rhythm, and it is remembering everything we forget. Years passed. The island was placed under permanent federal restriction. The case was quietly reclassified again. But families still gather every August. They light lanterns by the water, one for each of the Trask 6, and now for Forrester 2. Sometimes the beam from the lighthouse turns slightly, points not out to sea, but inland, toward the cliffs. Toward them, no new survivors have appeared. But a few people, sensitive ones, they say, have begun sketching spirals. Without knowing why, a child in Massachusetts drew one on his bedroom wall in red marker. When asked what it meant, he said, "It's where we go, when nobody keeps our picture." One final note, recovered from the walls of an abandoned storm shelter on Trask, scratched into the cement, 7 lines. We never died. We never left. We became the echo. We became the pulse. The lighthouse did not burn. The island did not lie. We just remembered too long. That was the last message. But if you go to the coast of Maine on a clear night, you'll still see the light, still blinking, still watching. 8 seconds, and sometimes, just sometimes, it blinks 9.